If you have to ask whether humanity will fight back, you are already too late. The transmission spread across every major network just as the burning wreckage of Helios Prime drifted silently between the stars. No one knew who had spoken those words. No one claimed responsibility. But every species remembered the uneasy silence that followed. 18 months earlier, the galaxy looked very different. Earth was considered reliable, predictable, even boring. Human cargo ships filled trade routes instead of war zones. Human diplomats argued over shipping regulations instead of military alliances. Human officers retired quietly instead of becoming legends. Most outsiders believed that was proof humanity had finally outgrown war. Daniel Brooks understood why they believed it. Sitting alone inside Earth's embassy overlooking the Galactic Council District, he watched freighters glide peacefully through the morning traffic while a fresh cup of black coffee cooled beside his tablet. At 46, Daniel no longer looked like the decorated Navy commander whose tactical decisions had once filled military academies. His dark hair had begun turning gray around the temples. Fine lines surrounded his eyes. His navy blue suit fit comfortably, almost making him disappear among the countless bureaucrats walking the corridors every day. That was exactly how he wanted it. His assistant, Rebecca Collins, stepped into the office carrying a stack of reports. "Morning, Ambassador." Daniel smiled without looking away from the window. "Morning, Rebecca. Anything exciting?" "Depends how you define exciting." The Dravari Empire filed another complaint saying we're expanding commercial routes too close to their border. Daniel finally turned toward her. "We aren't." "I know." "Then send them the navigation records again." Rebecca sighed. "This will be the 4th time." Daniel shrugged lightly. Sometimes people don't want answers. They want reactions. Rebecca had worked beside him long enough to recognize that calm tone. Whenever Daniel sounded the most relaxed, he was usually thinking 3 steps ahead. Before she could answer, another message flashed across the office display. Priority 1. Dravari military fleet movements. Rebecca's expression tightened. "That's the 3rd deployment this month." Daniel scanned the report in silence. Hundreds of warships repositioning near neutral territory. Officially, another military exercise. Unofficially, everyone understood the message. Pressure. Intimidation. Testing boundaries. "Should I notify Fleet Command?" Rebecca asked quietly. Daniel set the tablet down. "They're already watching. Do you think they're preparing for something?" Daniel looked back toward the stars beyond the embassy glass. Cargo vessels continued their routes as if nothing had changed. Families boarded passenger liners. Workers hurried between stations. Life always looked ordinary right before history changed. "I think," Daniel finally said, "they've convinced themselves we've forgotten who we are." Across the galaxy, inside the towering fortress city of the Dravari Empire, High Marshal Kaler Voss stood before an enormous tactical display showing every known human colony. His senior commanders waited silently. "Report." General Soren Malik folded his hands behind his back. "Human military production remains low. Defense budgets continue shrinking. 82% of new construction supports civilian infrastructure." Kaler allowed himself the faintest smile. "Exactly as predicted." Another officer nodded confidently. "Their economy depends on trade. They won't risk open conflict." Kaler studied the glowing image of Earth rotating peacefully in the center of the display. Every civilization grows comfortable. Every civilization mistakes comfort for permanence. He reached forward and rested one hand against the holographic projection. "Humanity believes peace is their greatest achievement." His voice remained calm, almost respectful. "Soon they'll discover it was simply a privilege we allowed them to enjoy." Thousands of miles away, Daniel Brooks stood quietly beneath the embassy flag as the artificial sunrise illuminated the council district. His phone vibrated once. A secure message from Earth appeared with only 4 words. "Observe. Do not respond." Daniel read it twice before locking the screen. He slipped the phone into his pocket, picked up his coffee, and watched another peaceful morning begin. Around him, nobody noticed how close the galaxy had come to waking something it did not understand. The Dravari Empire did not prepare for war because they feared humanity. They prepared because they believed fear itself was the most effective weapon in the galaxy. High Marshal Kaler Voss stood before the Imperial Defense Assembly while dozens of planetary governors watched from towering holographic screens. Every face carried the same confidence. Every report confirmed the same conclusion. Earth was shrinking its military presence across known space. Human shipyards were producing freight carriers instead of cruisers. Recruiting numbers continued to decline. Trade agreements multiplied while defense contracts quietly disappeared. Kaler folded his hands behind his back. They have become merchants. One governor laughed softly. A species that worries more about shipping schedules than battle plans cannot threaten an empire. Another added, their diplomats spend months negotiating inspection permits. They have forgotten how quickly borders can change. Kayla did not laugh. He simply nodded. History rewards civilizations that recognize weakness before their rivals do. On the opposite side of the galaxy, Daniel Brooks sat inside a conference room filled with representatives from 12 allied systems. The mood was noticeably different. Senator Olivia Grant dropped a classified report onto the polished table. The Dravari have established 3 more military checkpoints near civilian trade corridors. Governor Luis Bennett leaned forward. They are squeezing us without technically violating any treaty. Daniel quietly read every page before setting the folder aside. Has anyone been harmed? Not directly, Olivia answered. But freight inspections that used to take 2 hours now take 2 days. Medical shipments are delayed. Food deliveries are being rerouted. Insurance costs are climbing. They are slowly turning public opinion against us. Another council member slammed his hand against the table, then hit them with sanctions. Or move the fleet, someone else argued. Show them we are not afraid. Daniel listened without interrupting. When the room finally fell silent, he spoke in the same calm voice that frustrated both friends and rivals. If someone spends every day trying to provoke you, ask yourself why they need you to lose your temper. Several officials exchanged disappointed looks. Governor Bennett frowned. With respect, Ambassador, people are starting to think Earth is backing down. Daniel nodded. I know. Are they wrong? Daniel looked around the room before answering. No. They are seeing exactly what we want them to see. The meeting ended without dramatic speeches or military announcements. Outside the embassy, reporters immediately surrounded Daniel. Ambassador Brooks, does Earth intend to answer the latest Dravari deployments? Is the Alliance considering emergency mobilization? Can you guarantee there will not be war? Daniel stopped only long enough to face the cameras. The United Terran Alliance remains committed to peace. Nothing more. No threats. No promises. By evening, every major network replayed the clip beside images of expanding Dravari fleets. Across countless worlds, commentators reached the same conclusion. Humanity had become cautious. Some even called them frightened. Kaler watched the broadcasts with quiet satisfaction. Exactly as expected, he told General Soren Malik. They are conditioning their own citizens to accept surrender. Soren hesitated. Permission to speak freely? Granted. Ambassador Brooks does not look like a frightened man. Kaler glanced toward him. Confidence without strength is merely optimism. Before Soren could respond, a communications officer hurried into the command chamber. Hi, Marshal. Our reconnaissance squad reports unusual traffic near the New Horizon colony. Kaler barely looked up. Commercial? Mostly humanitarian transports, hospitals, schools, civilian contractors. Kaler dismissed the report with a wave of his hand. Then there is nothing worth worrying about. Nearly 500 light-years away, Daniel stood alone inside the embassy observation deck as a secure transmission reached his private terminal. The message contained only one sentence from Earth Fleet Intelligence. Dravari reconnaissance vessels have entered New Horizon space without authorization. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment before opening another encrypted channel. Rebecca. Yes, Ambassador? Cancel tomorrow morning's appointments. Something happened? Daniel stared into the darkness beyond the glass where distant navigation lights crossed the stars like silent promises. Not yet, he answered quietly. But I think someone is about to make the worst decision of their lives. New Horizon looked exactly like the kind of place people built when they believed tomorrow would arrive peacefully. School buses rolled through quiet neighborhoods beneath transparent climate domes. Farmers inspected rows of hydroponic crops stretching for miles. Children raced bicycles along shaded walking paths while supply drones drifted overhead carrying groceries instead of military equipment. Dr. Sarah Mitchell smiled as she watched her 8-year-old son, Noah, trying to convince his best friend that one day he would become the first human pilot to explore the unexplored regions beyond mapped space. "You are dreaming too big again," Sarah teased as she handed him a lunch container. Noah grinned. "Dad says somebody has to." A few feet away, her husband, Michael Mitchell, adjusted a shipment schedule on his wrist display before kissing Sarah on the forehead. "I will be back before dinner. Only if another inspection does not keep you waiting all day," she replied. Michael forced a smile. Seems like that is becoming normal. Across the colony, frustration had quietly replaced optimism. Dravari patrol ships appeared almost every day now. Cargo vessels were delayed without explanation. Civilian transports were ordered to change course for routine inspections that somehow lasted hours. No laws had technically been broken. No official complaints ever survived council review. It was pressure applied with surgical precision. Inside the colony administration building, Governor Emily Foster finished another tense call with Earth. "No evidence of military aggression," she muttered, reading the latest legal assessment. "Only escalating harassment." Her communications officer looked exhausted. "People are getting nervous." Emily nodded. "They should be. But panic is exactly what the Dravari want." At that same moment, 3 sleek Dravari reconnaissance cruisers emerged from hyperspace just outside New Horizons' security perimeter. Their arrival triggered automated alerts across the colony, but no evacuation orders followed. According to interstellar law, reconnaissance vessels were allowed to operate in nearby international space. Captain Darius Kane, commander of New Horizons Security, watched the tactical display with folded arms. "Open a diplomatic channel." Seconds later, the face of a Dravari officer appeared. Cold eyes, perfect posture, calm confidence. "This is Commander Tarek of the Imperial Reconnaissance Division. We are conducting authorized surveillance exercises." Darius answered evenly. "Your formation is less than 50 miles from civilian traffic lanes. Temporary. You are disrupting emergency medical flights." Tarek did not blink. "Collateral inconvenience is not a treaty violation." The transmission ended. Darius exhaled slowly. That sounded rehearsed. His deputy nodded. Because it probably was. Hundreds of light years away, Daniel Brooks received the full recording before anyone else outside the colony government. Rebecca entered his office carrying another secure tablet. Public opinion is turning fast. Every network is showing the Dravari version of events. Daniel watched the recording twice. Then a third time. He paused on the exact moment Commander Tarek referred to civilian delays as collateral inconvenience. "Rebecca." "Yes." "Find out everything about Commander Tarek." "You think he matters?" Daniel looked at the frozen image. People who choose their words this carefully usually know what comes next. Before Rebecca could answer, every monitor inside the embassy suddenly flashed with an emergency priority signal from New Horizon. Civilian air traffic had been suspended after an unidentified object crossed directly into colony airspace. Captain Darius Kane stared at the radar screen in disbelief. It was not one object anymore. It was 12. None of them answered repeated communication requests. None transmitted identification codes. And every one of them was descending toward the busiest civilian district on New Horizon. Daniel's secure phone rang only once. He answered immediately. The voice on the other end spoke just 6 words. "Ambassador." They crossed the boundary line. Captain Darius Kane did not waste another second. "Sound the colony alert. Suspend every civilian flight. Lock down the school district and the medical campus." Warning sirens echoed beneath the massive climate dome as families looked toward the sky, confused by the sudden change. Parents hurried to collect their children while emergency responders directed traffic away from the central landing corridors. Dr. Sarah Mitchell grabbed Noah's hand outside the hospital entrance. "Stay close to me." Noah looked up. "Mom, what is happening?" She forced a reassuring smile she did not feel. Probably another inspection. Even as she said the words, she knew they sounded hollow. Above the colony, the 12 unidentified craft continued descending without answering repeated hails. Their flight paths ignored every civilian safety corridor. Inside the security command center, an operator looked over his shoulder. "Captain, they are bypassing the navigation beacons." Darius narrowed his eyes. "Launch intercept teams. Defensive posture only. Nobody fires unless they fire first." For human patrol, fighters accelerated from the colony hangars, cutting through the blue glow of the atmosphere until they positioned themselves between the incoming formation and New Horizon. Lieutenant Ava Reynolds opened a secure channel. Unidentified vessels. This is New Horizon security. You have entered restricted civilian airspace. Reduce speed immediately and identify yourselves. Silence. The formation never slowed. Ava tried again. This is your final request before escort procedures begin. A calm alien voice finally answered. You have no authority to obstruct Imperial reconnaissance operations. You crossed into protected civilian airspace. Your interpretation is irrelevant. Before anyone could respond, the alien ships suddenly split into smaller groups, weaving around the patrol fighters with startling precision. Human pilots reacted instantly, banking hard to stay between the craft and the population centers without opening fire. The sky became a tense dance of speed and discipline instead of chaos. Down below, people watched the streaks of light crossing overhead while emergency vehicles guided families toward reinforced shelters. Noah squeezed his mother's hand tighter. Those are our pilots, right? Sarah nodded quietly. Yes. They will keep everyone safe? She looked toward the sky before answering. They always try. Hundreds of light years away, Daniel Brooks stood inside the embassy situation room as live telemetry streamed across every display. Rebecca Collins read updates almost faster than the computers processed them. Civilian evacuation is 71% complete. Human patrol craft are maintaining separation. No confirmed weapons discharge. Daniel folded his arms. Captain Kane is buying time. Rebecca glanced at him. Time for what? Daniel did not answer immediately. His attention stayed fixed on the tactical map, where every alien maneuver seemed just a little too deliberate. This was never a navigation mistake, he said quietly. They are measuring us. At the Dravari command fortress, High Marshal Kaler Voss watched the same live feed with quiet satisfaction. General Soren Malik shifted uneasily beside him. Our reconnaissance commander is pushing deeper than authorized. Kaler remained calm. Good. Every response teaches us something. And if the humans react? Kaler gave the slightest smile. Then they prove they have abandoned the image of peaceful cooperation they worked so hard to build. Suddenly, another officer rushed into the chamber. High Marshal, Commander Tarek reports unexpected resistance. Kaler looked up. Resistance? Not weapons. Discipline. The human pilots refuse every opportunity to escalate. For the first time that day, Kaler frowned. Interesting. Back above New Horizon, Lieutenant Ava Reynolds saw one of the alien craft break formation and angled directly toward the hospital district. Captain, I have one separating from the group. Darius answered without hesitation. Shadow it. Do not engage unless civilian lives are in immediate danger. Ava increased speed, her fighter sliding between the alien vessel and the city below. The distance closed to less than 50 yards. Then every warning alarm inside her cockpit activated at once. A powerful electronic pulse rolled across her instruments, turning every display black for one terrifying second. When the systems rebooted, the alien craft had vanished from radar, and somewhere below, the entire hospital district had suddenly gone dark. Darkness lasted only 4 seconds, but on New Horizon it felt much longer. Backup generators roared to life across the hospital district, emergency lights washing the streets in a dim amber glow while frightened families searched for one another. Dr. Sarah Mitchell immediately switched into professional instinct. Move every critical patient onto auxiliary power. Keep everyone calm. Nobody runs. Nurses and technicians answered without hesitation. Years of emergency drills suddenly became real. Outside, Captain Darius Kane stared at the tactical display as one impossible fact repeated itself. I still cannot see that ship. An operator shook his head. Every sensor is online. It is simply gone. Lieutenant Ava Reynolds circled above the district, scanning every inch of airspace with visual confirmation instead of electronics. Captain, I know it is here. I watched it descend. Keep your altitude. Trust your eyes. Then something caught her attention. Sunlight reflected off a nearly invisible distortion moving slowly toward the colony communication tower. I have movement, Ava whispered. Not on radar. Visual only. Track it. She rolled her fighter into a shallow turn, matching the distortion without locking weapons. Whatever technology the Dravari were using had fooled every automated system, but it could not completely hide from a human pilot looking through a cockpit canopy. Inside the embassy, Rebecca Collins hurried into the Situation Room, carrying a fresh intelligence packet. "Daniel, we finally identified the electronic pulse." Daniel looked up from the live feed. "Tell me." "It was not an attack. It was a mapping scan. Every hospital network, emergency shelter, communications relay, and power station was recorded in less than 3 seconds." Daniel's expression did not change, but Rebecca noticed his grip tighten around the edge of the conference table. "They were building a target profile," she said quietly. Daniel nodded once. "Which means they never intended this to remain a border dispute." Across the galaxy, General Soren Malik entered High Marshal Kaler Voss's command chamber, carrying the same data from the opposite perspective. Commander Tarek reports the scan exceeded expectations. Kaler studied the holographic map of New Horizon. Every civilian system glowed in remarkable detail. "Excellent. There is one complication." "Go on." "The human intercept pilot visually tracked our reconnaissance vessel after the cloaking field activated." Kaler slowly turned toward him. "Visually?" "Yes." Silence filled the room for several long seconds. "Interesting," Kaler finally said. "They adapt faster than the simulations predicted." He dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "It changes nothing. Phase 2 proceeds on schedule." Back above New Horizon, Ava continued shadowing the faint distortion until it suddenly accelerated toward open space. "Captain, it is leaving. Do not pursue beyond the perimeter." She watched the invisible vessel disappear into the stars, but something felt wrong. It had not behaved like a scouting mission ending successfully. It looked more like someone had finished placing the final piece on a game board. Hours later, colony life slowly returned to normal. Schools reopened. Cargo traffic resumed. News anchors described the incident as another tense encounter along a disputed frontier. The official Dravari statement denied any wrongdoing and accused Earth of manufacturing political theater. Public opinion across the galaxy shifted exactly as Kaler expected. Humanity looked overly sensitive. The Empire looked composed. Late that evening, Daniel Brooks received one final encrypted report before leaving his office. It did not come from diplomats or intelligence analysts. It came directly from Earth Fleet archives. The message contained a comparison between the Dravari mapping scan and classified records nearly 200 years old. Daniel read the conclusion twice before quietly locking the file. Rebecca noticed the color leave his face. "What is it?" Daniel slipped the tablet into his briefcase and answered with the same calm voice he always used when the situation became truly dangerous. "They did not discover anything new today." Rebecca frowned. "Then why does that report matter?" Daniel looked through the embassy window toward the stars where New Horizons circled peacefully, unaware of what had just begun. "Because they scanned the one place humanity swore no one would ever force us to defend again." Daniel Brooks arrived at Earth Fleet Archives before sunrise without an escort or official announcement. The underground facility had not appeared on a public map in over a century, and everyone working there understood one rule. If the ambassador visited in person, the situation had already changed. Admiral Grace Holloway met him at the secured entrance. "I was hoping that report was wrong." Daniel handed her the encrypted tablet. "Tell me it is." Grace studied the comparison files for several silent seconds before shaking her head. "It matches almost perfectly." She led him through a corridor lined with sealed vault doors until they stopped in front of an enormous display showing a forgotten section of human history. 211 years ago, Grace said quietly, Earth created a defensive doctrine after the Orion refuge crisis. The policy was simple. Hospitals, schools, civilian shelters, power stations, emergency communications. If anyone deliberately mapped those systems during peacetime, humanity would treat it as preparation for a first strike. Daniel kept his eyes on the screen, because that was exactly what happened back then. Grace nodded once. "We promised ourselves nobody would ever catch us unprepared again." Hundreds of light years away, High Marshal Kaler Voss believed everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Commander Tarek stood before him with complete confidence. The scan produced a full infrastructure profile. Human-civilian response patterns are now predictable within 2.3%. Kaler smiled. "Excellent. Begin Phase 2. General Soren Malik hesitated. "High Marshal, Are we certain pushing further is necessary? Earth has not taken military action. Kaler answered without raising his voice. That is precisely why we continue. Every day they refuse to respond. The galaxy loses more faith in them and places more confidence in us. He looked toward the holographic projection of New Horizon. Empires are not built through battles alone. They are built through perception. Within hours, Dravari patrol groups appeared across multiple trade corridors at once. Civilian cargo routes slowed to a crawl. Passenger liners received repeated inspection orders. Human relief convoys transporting medical equipment to remote settlements were forced into lengthy holding patterns. Legally, every action remained just inside treaty limits. Politically, the pressure became impossible to ignore. News channels exploded with debate. How much longer will Earth tolerate this? One commentator asked. Has humanity forgotten how to defend its own people? Inside the United Terran Council chamber, arguments erupted from every direction. Senator Olivia Grant slammed a report onto the conference table. This cannot continue. Governor Luis Bennett pointed toward the live trade statistics. Entire colonies are losing supplies because we refuse to draw a line. Daniel listened until every voice finally faded. The line has already been crossed, he said calmly. The room fell silent. Olivia stared at him. Then why are we still waiting? Daniel looked toward Admiral Grace Holloway. She understood immediately. Without saying a word, she placed a sealed authorization folder on the table. Nobody else recognized the symbol burned into its cover. It belonged to a command that officially no longer existed. Before anyone could ask another question, every display inside the chamber flashed red. Emergency priority. New Horizon Colony. Captain Darius Kane appeared on the main screen, breathing hard but completely composed. Ambassador, we have confirmed coordinated Dravari movements in 6 neighboring systems. They are not targeting military bases. Daniel's expression remained unreadable. What are they targeting? Darius answered without hesitation. The jump gates. They are positioning ships around every civilian evacuation route. The room became perfectly still. Admiral Holloway slowly opened the sealed folder for the first time in decades. Inside rested a single activation card carrying only 3 words. Release Sleeping Fleet. Daniel looked at the card for one long moment before quietly placing his hand on it. Prepare the authorization, he said. But do not send it. Not yet. The authorization card remained untouched for exactly 19 hours. During that time, humanity did something the Dravari Empire could not understand. Nothing. No fleets crossed the border. No speeches filled the news. No emergency mobilization appeared on civilian broadcasts. Across the galaxy, analysts declared that Earth had finally accepted its place beneath a stronger power. High Marshal Kaler Voss watched the headlines with quiet satisfaction. Confidence, he said to General Soren Malik, is earned when your opponent stops resisting. Soren studied the latest reconnaissance reports. Our patrols have completed blockade positions around every major civilian jump corridor near New Horizon. Any military response? None. Kaler smiled. Then Phase 3 begins tomorrow. Far away on Earth, Daniel Brooks stood alone inside a windowless operations room where every wall displayed the same simple message. Civilian evacuation status. Green indicators slowly spread across dozens of colonies as families quietly boarded transport vessels under the cover of routine maintenance schedules. Freight companies changed routes without explanation. Medical supplies were relocated. School calendars were adjusted. Nobody outside a handful of officials realized an entire civilization was repositioning itself without creating panic. Rebecca Collins walked in carrying another stack of reports. Evacuations are 89% complete. Daniel nodded. Keep the public schedule unchanged. People are accusing us of doing nothing. Let them. Rebecca hesitated before asking the question that had been bothering her for days. Are we really waiting for one more move? Daniel looked toward the star map. No, we are waiting for one more choice. At New Horizon, Captain Darius Kane stood beside Lieutenant Ava Reynolds on the observation platform overlooking the main jump gate. Civilian traffic had nearly disappeared. Maintenance crews quietly replaced navigation systems while pretending it was routine inspection work. Ava folded her arms. Feels strange. What does? Everything is quieter than it should be. Darius nodded. That usually means everyone important already knows something the rest of us do not. Before another word could be spoken, long-range sensors detected multiple Dravari formations entering neighboring sectors simultaneously. They did not attack. They did not issue threats. They simply occupied positions around every approach leading toward the colony. Ava stared at the tactical display. They are closing every exit. Darius answered calmly. Record everything. On the flagship of the Imperial fleet, Commander Tarek reported directly to Kaler. All formations are in position. Excellent. Open a channel to the Galactic Council. Minutes later, representatives from dozens of civilizations watched Kaler address the chamber. The Dravari Empire is conducting lawful regional security operations to protect commerce from potential instability. Several delegates nodded in agreement. The evidence seemed undeniable. Humanity had remained silent through every stage. Why would anyone question the Empire now? Then one council aide interrupted the session. High Marshal, we have received an unusual request from the Terran Embassy. Kaler smiled faintly. Put it through. Daniel Brooks appeared on the chamber screen wearing the same Navy suit he had worn throughout the entire crisis. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. The United Terran Alliance has one formal question for the Empire. Kaler folded his hands. Proceed. Daniel met his eyes without the slightest hint of anger. Are your fleets currently positioned by choice? The chamber fell unusually quiet. Kaler answered without hesitation. They are. Daniel gave one slow nod. Thank you. That statement has now been entered into the official record. Rebecca, watching from just outside the camera frame, felt a chill despite the room's comfortable temperature. She had heard that tone only once before. Daniel had just confirmed something he had been trying to verify for days. The transmission ended almost immediately. No argument. No warning. No threat. Kaler laughed softly as the screen went dark. He has nothing left. But deep beneath Earth Fleet archives, where the sealed command center had remained inactive for more than 2 centuries, a silent computer recognized the completed legal conditions attached to Daniel's recorded exchange. One by one, lights began illuminating across an enormous tactical display that had not awakened in generations, and an automated voice, unheard by any living citizen until that moment, calmly announced. Authorization criteria confirmed. Sleeping Fleet activation sequence is now available for executive release. When the activation lights came alive beneath Earth Fleet archives, nobody celebrated. There were no cheers. No speeches. Admiral Grace Holloway simply looked at Daniel Brooks and asked the question everyone else was afraid to say out loud. Are you absolutely certain? Daniel watched the status indicators spread across the ancient command network until every system glowed green. No, he answered honestly. I am certain we have run out of better choices. Grace slowly inserted the authorization card into the secure console, but she did not press the final confirmation. Once this starts, there is no pretending we are still only negotiating. Daniel nodded. That ended the moment they surrounded civilian escape routes. Half a galaxy away, High Marshal Kaler Voss entered the Galactic Council chamber to congratulations from several member worlds. Trade routes had shifted toward the Empire. Neutral governments praised Dravari stability. Commentators openly questioned whether humanity still deserved its influence inside the Council. Kaler accepted every compliment with quiet confidence. Strength creates order, he said. The galaxy simply recognizes reality. Then an aide hurried across the chamber carrying a fresh intelligence report. High Marshal, we have a situation. Kaler barely looked up. New Horizon? No, sir. Another border protest? No, the aide swallowed. 3 reconnaissance stations along the outer frontier stopped transmitting exactly 12 minutes ago. General Soren Malik frowned. Destroyed. There are no distress calls. No debris. No emergency beacons. They simply disappeared from the network. Kaler dismissed the concern. Communication failures happen. Before anyone could continue, another officer entered at a near run. 5 more stations just went offline. Then another report arrived. 2 automated logistics hubs had stopped responding. A navigation relay had vanished from fleet communications. Every incident shared the same pattern. Complete silence. No attack warnings. No visible enemy. No explanation. On New Horizon, Captain Darius Kane watched long-range sensors with growing disbelief. Dravari blockade ships remained exactly where they had been, But something had changed. Lieutenant Reynolds. Yes, Captain. Count the patrols. Ava checked twice before answering. There are fewer than yesterday. How many fewer? 7 ships. Darius leaned closer to the display. Where did they go? Nobody had an answer. At the embassy, Rebecca Collins hurried into Daniel's office carrying reports from across known space. This cannot be a coincidence. Daniel quietly read each update before placing them into a neat stack. It is not. Are our forces doing this? Daniel looked at her without blinking. Our forces have not received a single public deployment order. Rebecca lowered her voice. Public? Daniel did not respond. Instead, he walked toward the observation window where hundreds of civilian transports crossed peaceful trade lanes, completely unaware that the balance of power was beginning to shift. Back inside the council chamber, Kaler demanded a direct connection to Commander Tarek. The transmission opened after several tense seconds. Tarek appeared composed, but the confidence in his voice had faded. Hi, Marshal. We have expanded our sensor range. Report. We are detecting drive signatures. Human battle groups? No, sir. Then what? Tarek hesitated. We cannot match them to any vessel currently listed in the Terran military registry. Kaler's expression hardened. Impossible. That was my first conclusion as well. Tarek enlarged the sensor image. Hundreds of faint signals appeared beyond the edge of explored space, moving with perfect synchronization but refusing every standard identification protocol. They were not approaching quickly. They were simply arriving. General Soren Malik stared at the display. How many ships are we looking at? Tarek answered after another long pause. I cannot give you an exact number because our computers keep increasing the estimate. Silence filled the command deck. For the first time since the crisis began, High Marshal Keller Voss realized the intelligence reports about humanity had measured only the fleet everyone was allowed to see. Somewhere beyond the maps trusted by the entire galaxy, something older had finally begun its journey home, and Daniel Brooks quietly reached for the confirmation panel that only he could authorize, knowing the next decision would determine not only how this conflict ended, but what kind of civilization humanity would remain after it was over. Daniel Brooks rested his hand on the confirmation panel for several long seconds before pressing it with quiet certainty. No dramatic alarms echoed through the chamber. No countdown appeared on giant displays. The ancient system accepted the command with a single calm response. Executive authorization confirmed. Admiral Grace Holloway closed her eyes for a brief moment before looking back at the tactical map. Hundreds of unknown drive signatures continued moving toward human territory, but they were no longer unidentified. One after another, ancient registry numbers began appearing beside each signal. Ships that historians believed had been dismantled generations ago. Fleets officially listed as retired. Command groups that had vanished from public records long before anyone in the current government had been born. Rebecca Collins stared at the screen in disbelief. We had all of this. Daniel answered softly. We kept it because we hoped nobody would ever give us a reason to remember it. Across the galaxy, the Dravari blockade around New Horizon quietly dissolved without a single order being spoken aloud. Patrol ships changed course. Reconnaissance wings withdrew. Captains who had spent weeks advancing suddenly found themselves requesting updated instructions. Commander Tarek watched the expanding sensor picture in silence. More and more human formations appeared from beyond explored space, each one holding perfect position without threatening a single civilian world. They did not chase anyone. They did not demand surrender. They simply occupied every strategic route that had once belonged to the Empire. Tarek finally opened a secure channel. Hi, Marshal. If these numbers are accurate, they could have done this long before today. Kaler Voss looked at the same impossible display and spoke more quietly than anyone in the command center had ever heard. I know. Minutes later, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Delegates who had confidently predicted humanity's decline now watched as report after report confirmed the same astonishing reality. Human fleets had secured evacuation corridors, reopened commercial routes, restored civilian navigation, and established defensive positions without firing a single offensive shot. Every action had been measured. Every movement had been documented. Every legal requirement had been satisfied before the first command was ever issued. Daniel Brooks appeared before the council one final time. He wore the same Navy suit, carried the same calm expression, and spoke with the same steady voice. The United Terran Alliance has no interest in conquest. We request only that every civilian route be respected, every treaty be honored, and every government remember that restraint is not the absence of strength. The chamber remained completely silent. High Marshal Kaler Voss slowly stood. Pride still filled his posture, but certainty had disappeared from his eyes. You concealed all of this for centuries. Daniel shook his head. No, we simply stopped talking about it because peace worked better. Kaler lowered his gaze for the first time. Then I misjudged your silence. Daniel answered with quiet honesty. Many people do. Weeks later, New Horizon looked like itself again. Children returned to school beneath clear skies. Cargo ships filled the trade lanes. Dr. Sarah Mitchell walked Noah through the hospital garden after finishing another ordinary shift. Noah looked toward a distant convoy of human ships disappearing into the stars. Mom, were we ever really in danger? Sarah smiled gently before squeezing his shoulder. Every generation hopes the next one never has to learn why peace matters. Back on Earth, Daniel declined every award offered to him. Reporters asked why he refused public recognition after preventing a galactic catastrophe. He only smiled. Heroes are people who rebuild normal life after everyone else stops paying attention. That evening he stood alone beneath a quiet sunset as Rebecca joined him overlooking the ocean. Do you think they finally understand us? She asked. Daniel watched the waves roll toward the shore before answering. Maybe. And if they forget? A faint smile crossed his face. Then I hope they remember one lesson before making the same mistake again. Rebecca waited. Daniel looked toward the horizon where the last light of day disappeared beyond the water. Humanity never chose peace because we were too weak to fight. We chose peace because we knew exactly what winning would cost.